was a horrific crime. This is the result. This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
Carpio brothers. 2 gang members were found guilty by a jury for the murder of an 18-year-old man at a Cleveland high school in Reseda. The convicted individuals are Anthony Carpio, who is 18 years old, and Michael Stephen Carpio, who is 20 years old. They were charged with second-degree murder. Another person involved in the crime, Michelle Pineda, who is 20 years old, pleaded no contest to being an accessory after the fact, meaning she knew about the crime but didn't stop it. The incident happened when the Carpio brothers, part of the Rockwood Street Gang, approached Kevin Orellana while playing handball at Cleveland High School. They challenged him, a fight broke out, and Anthony stabbed Orellana. The brothers then fled to a car driven by Pineda. The jury also found that both defendants were part of a gang, and Anthony's knife used during the attack was confirmed. If the Carpio brothers are convicted, they could face a maximum sentence of 15 years to life in state prison.
As a parent, we plan to dance at their wedding, celebrate a promotion, look forward to possible grandchildren. The last thought we would ever have is that we will have to plan their funeral.
Abel Gallegos. By Judge Philip McNulty in Jefferson County District Court, Abel Gallegos was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 163 years. This sentence came after he was found guilty of kidnapping and killing 28-year-old Simone Duran as part of a retaliation murder. The incident occurred because Duran had identified Alonzo Quintana in a lineup during an attempted murder investigation in Adams County in early 2018. As a result, Gallegos, Quintana, and Renee Francisco Rosales targeted Duran. They lured Duran, kidnapped her, and then shot her 10 times as she pleaded for her life. Afterwards, they set her body on fire in a secluded area at 7th and Nile in Golden. Gallegos had initiated contact with Duran on social media and met with Rosales and others at a house in Denver. They left the house together and Rosales went home. Gallegos took Duran to a parking lot where they met Quintana, and that's when the brutal assault and kidnapping occurred. This is Gallegos' 6th felony conviction, and he's violated parole or probation 8 times. Judge McNulty expressed shock and disgust at the callousness and complete disregard for human life demonstrated in this crime.
I am struck by the casualness in which it was committed, the absolute disregard for human life.
Kenneth Dwayne Hill, Jomar DeVille Robinson, and Darius Aramon Diaz Gaskin. After 2 days of intense negotiations, the jury found 3 men guilty for the brutal killing of Kenneth Hill, the owner of a popular party store in Clinton Township. The courtroom was tense as the judge read out the charges. Hill's family sat quietly, tears flowing down their faces, hoping for justice. The accused, Kenneth Dwayne Hill, Jomar DeVille Robinson, and Darius Aramon Diaz Gaskin, remained stoic as the verdict was read. They were found guilty of first-degree armed robbery, felony firearm possession, and conspiracy to commit armed robbery. The judge sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in applause at the sentence. The judge spoke firmly to the guilty men, calling them a disgrace to humanity and expressing hope that they will reflect on their terrible decisions while in prison.
You have the blood of a loving father, husband, son, and brother on your hands.
Another accomplice had already been sentenced to life without parole for the crime. The store's surveillance video captured the incident, which lasted just over a minute. It showed the 3 culprits entering the store and shooting Basim Sulaka, the innocent store owner. Sulaka's sister Vivian described him as a peaceful man who didn't believe in keeping a gun in his store. He trusted his customers and believed in the safety of his community, which is why he didn't have thick plexiglass installed. Judith Marianne Moran. Judy Moran, a notorious Australian Moran crime family member, led a life filled with crime and drama, resembling something out of a gangster movie. Born in 1944, she became involved in the infamous Melbourne gangland killings. Her life was marked by turbulent relationships and tragic deaths, including her son and former partners. In 2009, she was arrested in connection with the murder of her brother-in-law, and during a search of her home, police found weapons and incriminating evidence.
Handgun, seems to be a night aiming device on that.
She was later found guilty of murder and received a sentence of 26 years in prison, with a minimum of 21 years to be served. Christopher Lockett. Christopher Lockett and his accomplices Javier Gibson, Quatez Clark, Joshua Rooks, and Jasper Green were part of the notorious Gangster Disciples street gang and were convicted of multiple charges including murder and involvement in gang activities. The charges were connected to the brutal killing of Christopher Dean, a former police informant in California. The crime began as a drugs transaction, but when Lockett and his gang members discovered Dean's past as an informant, they decided to punish him. They subjected him to unimaginable torture and cruelty, beating him with a 2x4 and a crowbar, sexually assaulting him with a handle-like object, and ultimately shooting him twice in the back of the head. Afterwards, they left his body in the trunk of a car at an Atlanta metro station.
That his skull was actually depressed.
As a result of the trial, Lockett received a life sentence in prison with no possibility of parole. Clark was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus an additional 5 years. Green was given a life sentence with 3 more years added. Brooks and Gibson were both sentenced to life imprisonment. Lee Rios. In 2015, Lee Rios, a Latin Kings gang member, received a life sentence in prison without the chance of parole for the cruel and planned shooting of an 18-year-old boy named Kenneth Lopez. With the help of other gang members, Rios lured Lopez from his home and carried out the terrible act. He even boasted about the killing afterwards, showing his psychopathic tendencies. During his sentencing, Rios didn't show sympathy towards Lopez's grieving family, who were present in the courtroom. Rios was found guilty of first-degree murder and 8 gun charges, revealing his complete disregard for the safety of others. Additionally, he received an additional 14 to 15 years in state prison for improper storage of a large-capacity firearm. George Thomas. George Thomas was found guilty on 53 charges. He tried to convince the court that he hadn't been involved in gang activities since 1998. However, the court rejected his claims, citing his previous convictions for home invasions, murder, and assault, and ruled that he had used his position in the prison gang to plan the killings. The trial against Thomas and his 16 accomplices was lengthy, and 6 other gangsters were also sentenced to life imprisonment under the Prevention of Organized Crime Act for crimes committed between 2006 and 2010, including murders, conspiracy, and racketeering. During the trial, Thomas made over 30,000 cell calls from prison between 2008 and 2010, turning the prison into his headquarters. Witnesses were terrified to testify against him, and special measures were taken to protect them. The public gallery was cleared, leaving only journalists to allow witnesses to testify without fear of retaliation from Thomas's gang. In court, witnesses testified that Thomas and his group had repeatedly attempted to kill rival gangsters, with one particular witness being a prime target. Victor Rodas. Victor Rodas, an alleged member of the notorious MS-13 gang, has been found guilty of playing a role in the brutal killing of 17-year-old Raymond Wood. He has been sentenced to 55 years in jail for this terrible crime, though many feel it's not enough for the severity of his actions. During the trial, evidence showed that Rodas lured Wood to the crime scene with a fake drug deal and ambushed him along with his co-defendants. They kidnapped Wood from his home, strangled him unconscious in the car, and brutally stabbed him 29 times with a 17-inch knife. Throughout the trial, Rodas appeared indifferent and unapologetic, showing no remorse. Thankfully, justice was served, and Rodas was sentenced to 55 years in prison for his involvement in the murder of Raymond Wood. Sandra Avila Beltran. Sandra, known as the Queen of the Pacific in the media, is a member of a Mexican drug cartel with a fascinating criminal background influenced by her family connections. Her family has ties to influential figures in major cartels, like Rafael Caro Quintero and the Beltran Leyva brothers. Her mother's family smuggled heroin and later expanded into trafficking cocaine. During her youth, she had relationships with prominent drug lords and married 2 ex-police officers turned traffickers, who were later assassinated. She gained power in the drug world through her connection with Juan Diego Espinosa Ramirez Elias, known as the Tiger, a significant figure in Colombia's Norte del Valle cartel. Sandra lived in Guadalajara and Hermosillo until her arrest in 2001, when authorities discovered a massive cocaine shipment connected with her and Espinosa Ramirez. She was detained for suspicion of illegal weapon possession and money laundering, and extradition to the United States was pending. Eventually, on August 10, 2012, she was extradited to the United States for criminal charges. Maria Chataleon. Maria Chataleon is a powerful and influential figure in the criminal underworld, known for her involvement in drugs and murder. tragedy struck when her son Danny Cleaver Leon was killed in a shootout with the police in 2008. Despite having 13 children, Maria faced a major obstacle when she wanted to attend her son's funeral in the United States. She was banned from re-entering the country due to her previous time in US prison. Determined to cross the border and attend the funeral, Maria sought the help of a human smuggler named Alvarez Marquez. Marquez was known for his unusual smuggling endeavors, including transporting a 3-month-old baby and hiding Chinese workers in a freezer truck. Together, they considered various risky methods, like jumping through the border fence or swimming beneath it through the highly polluted New River, flowing from Mexicali to Calexico, California. Unfortunately, their attempt to cross the border resulted in Maria's arrest, and she was sentenced to 8 years in prison for her involvement in the smuggling operation. That concludes this video. Thanks for watching.